Welcome back to this week's episode of Personal Selling. And I thought today I will do a special edition focusing on one of our newer books, Smoking with Joe. It was actually the first novel I have been writing together with Jesper. All the other books we have done have been more, I would say, classical technical books where you could dive into personal leadership, communication, mental fitness, satisfaction selling, uh, even how to find the right partner. I think that was the first book we did more than 15 years ago. But we have always dreamt about writing this story, this novel, where we wanted to build in the ideas into a entertaining story that would make it easy and maybe even fun and interesting to acquire some of the ideas and skills we have been focusing on developing in other people for years and years and years. And then the idea came to us about writing this book, Smoking with Joe. And you could ask, Smoking with Joe? Why this title? And I'll come back to that later in this episode. But I think really what I think you can get from reading this book is you can get into this universe of Spectra Robotics, this mid-sized company that have been, developing from being a startup to now becoming a more mature company that have been really successful in developing high quality products. And they had even invested time and energy in developing a sales force that was really skillful in using what we define as stretch selling. And they have seen quite good results over the years. But when we enter into the story, they start to see challenges keeping their growth because adding more pressure seems to not really be the answer. Pushing harder is not really what works anymore. It's like the organization have this fatigue, and the customer don't really feel that they're being respected and treated in an optimal way, and they are under continuous pressure because they are under the risk of being taken over of one of their big competitors. So the board are putting even more pressure onto the sales leaders and the sales team to really get to the targets. And we come into this story where we are following the sales manager of the Eastern region, John, and his struggle to really get to the numbers. And to begin with, it's not that what he's doing is not working, but it's actually not giving him the results he wants. And the story is really about how he finds a new way, how he finds a way to work with his sales team, with their customers, that opens up for radical different opportunities and possibilities. And we are following John and his team over the course of a few years to see how the impact of shifting from stretch selling to satisfaction selling give real sustainable impact, not just for Spectra Robotics, but also for their clients. Writing a novel, you can say, well, is it all fictional? And I think when you start, if you get the book and you open it, you will say that in the beginning of the book, we have this quote saying that everything in this book is real and some of it actually happened. And I will not be too specific here because I will not take out the magic for you, the reader, of reading the book. But I think maybe some of the things in the book is about things I have experienced myself being in the corporate sales world for years. I have seen the dynamics. I have experienced the life on the inside being in corporate sales. And some of the things I have experienced have been really great, but I have also seen a lot of what I would say call not so great decisions. I have even seen people doing what is now called bullshit jobs, just basically covering their asses, spending time explaining why they didn't produce results, instead of actually getting out there and make things happen. So in this novel, you will get access to all the experience I have gathered through a lifetime in sales and leadership. And some of it is maybe also inspired by my first meeting with Joseph Riggio back in 2000, where I was actually a part of an organization that was struggling because we were losing customers. We were not really performing at the level we wanted to. And there I met Joseph, and he helped me basically turn my whole idea about how to work with customers or sales upside down. And I still remember the first time I met with him in Sun Valley back in 2000. And that was the first time I met a sales consultant that was actually doing what he was saying. He was actually using his own sales model in selling to us. And for me, personally, that was why I chose him to work with our salespeople. Because all the competitors, they were saying one thing and doing something else. And I must say that when I decided to buy from him, I didn't really knew the depth and the impact that would have on my life. Because now, more than 25 years later, this have really defined how I work with customers, how I work with communication. And I think, again, it have just created a very different space to live with it. And I think, again, reading the book, Smoking with Joe, will give you some of the insights I got back in 2000 in Sun Valley. The book has been out now for almost a year, and we have gotten several feedback from happy readers. And some of them have said, wow, I didn't knew that you know how we was working in our company, because it's exactly what we are experiencing every day. So even though it's a novel, even though it's fictional, I think, again, you will be able to mirror your everyday life and situations from this book. And we hope that this way of communicating with you as a reader will really help you absorb and digest the messages, so that you can help yourself and your organization make the transformation that could really help you take your performance to the next level. So our ambition with this book is to really make the ideas simple, to make the reading easy and enjoyable, so that it will be something you can do almost for fun, but still grow. And I think that that actually also be one of the challenges for us in writing this book. Because, again, making some of these ideas we're working for so simple and explicit is not that easy. Because, again, there's always more layers than we can describe in a novel like this. But from the feedback we have gotten, I believe that we have been more successful in accomplishing what we aim for than we believed that we could ever do. You could say that, wow, Smoking with Joe, that's a funny title. And maybe it's not even appropriate because, smoking, that's not healthy. It's almost as bad as drinking with Joe. But, Joe is not a big drinker, but he really liked a nice cigar. And when we were working on this book and finding a title, it's not that easy. I thought about a small series of YouTubes that Joseph Riggio did, and he's, not to say too much, have been the character we have had in our mind when we developed Joe for this book. And he actually did a series on YouTube back in 2009, 10, 11, which he labeled Smoking with Joe. And I can really recommend you to go back into YouTube and maybe put in the words Joseph Riggio, Smoking with Joe. And then you will find some episodes where you will find Joseph in a cigar salon. There's even one he's doing in Finland when we were up there doing training for a group of private bankers, where he will share some of his insight of lives. And I think those specific episodes are not related to the book at all, but we found that sitting there, having a cigar, having a dialogue around how to work with customers and leadership would just be an optimal space for having this deep, insightful dialogue. So that's why we have brought this idea into the book. And I even had one of my customers living in Barcelona who came to me for a training here in Denmark and said, wow, it was a fantastic book to read. Because, he actually had smoked the cigars Joe is smoking in the book. And he said, the last cigar, that's actually the world's best cigar. And it proved that this customer of mine, he was a member of a cigar club in Barcelona. So maybe this book have a special audience within cigar enthusiasts, because reading the book and hearing about the cigars made him almost tasting those cigars as he was reading the book. So that's just a extra value you can get if you enjoy cigars. For those of you who don't enjoy cigars, or maybe even hate it, just see it as a metaphor, okay? You can relax. So even though it's not politically correct to smoke, it's just a metaphor. So this first book, Smoking with Joe, is really about Spectra Robotics choosing the green door, choosing the satisfaction selling method over stretch selling, and seeing the impact that's having. The next book in the series, Walking with Chris, will be launched early in 2026. And that's basically a book about the best salesperson in the organization Mara that get the promotion to become a sales manager. And we will follow her journey from being an individual contributor to being a sales leader, and that transformation journey she has to go through. And then finally, Dancing with Tower book we are now working on is about Catherine, the CEO of Spectra Robotics, and her challenges leading an international company in a dynamic, chaotic world, using the same ideas from the satisfaction selling methodology. So, if you really want to be inspired, getting some new ideas for the coming year, now is a good time to start. So, see you next week on the next episode of Personal Selling Weekly.